Elusive Tech Podcast, ladies and gentlemen. It's just me and Randy again. We thought we were getting some normalcy, but then California turned on fire, so plans have changed. Nick is now dead, but we're going to move on anyway.
The show must continue.
He's not here.
That's right.
It's a shame. We'll miss you, Nick.
Bye, Nick. It was fun having you.
See you in another life.
See ya.
But Randy, I have this on me this week.
I know. I saw your unboxing.
I'm glad Nick didn't live to see this because I think he'd be vomiting on the show this week if he saw it. But that's been my product of testing for the past couple days, and I think this is the best Android ever.
Wow. Yeah, I noticed right out the bat you were being pretty high accolades for the price point.
I think Pixel found their groove here. They found what they're good at, and they figured out how to stick to it and nail it. And it's like the Pixel 3a, but even better and cheaper at the same time, which is impressive that they were able to make that work. So when it comes to just pure value and all-around package, because in previous Androids like Samsung or the Note, I've said things like, I would get this if iOS didn't exist, but iOS does exist. Sure. So spending that much money on a phone that gets 2 or 3 years of updates is kind of hard to justify, but Apple has a hard time competing in this price margin because there's not much in the $350 department. Even the SE doesn't get that low. So it's kind of hard to beat.
Does that tell me you're going to hold on to this phone like longer term or no? Yeah, okay. No.
One extra Android is enough for me. I don't need more than one.
What's better than what 350 is the price point, right? 350? 300?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, 350.
With tax it's like 370, which is amazing to me that including taxes and shipping and everything, it's still under $400.
What's better than 350 is a free OnePlus, so I totally get it.
That's true.
Yeah, that's true.
You can't beat free.
You can't beat free.
I guess a paid sponsored, but I'm not getting that. So
let me ask you this about your this A line, right? So I know you've always I say what you are about you being hard on Android. You've always been consistent about like it's too expensive. So now that you over these last couple of days, you're like, oh yeah, this is definitely the best Android. Would you say the lack of bells and whistles is a necessity, maybe like across the board for all smartphones then, if you're finding value in or not value, but you're finding the performance of this phone in that price point? Because I'm assuming with no wireless charging, I don't know if it's
water resistance.
Yeah, so there's that. When you take away all that stuff and it's like, we're just going to give you a clean OS, our version for our OS, which would be Android, and then give you a good camera and a relatively, a good battery. Is that enough to be like, all right, this is we pushed it to the $1,400, whatever you want to call the duo. Yeah, $2,000, and now we really bring it back in. Is this enough to say like this is probably where phones in general should probably start gravitating towards, or what do you think about that?
Yeah, when it comes to like average people, not techies, just people who need a new phone, people who want something that works and they use it to make phone calls, texts, and social media, this is the phone that I think has prioritized what people care about the best in the most cost-effective manner. It's very close to the SE, but comparing the SE, which we still have, to the 4A, it's like it really just comes down to OS preference, but ultimately the Pixel does outshine it in a few departments when it comes to screen size, the bezels, and I'm sure in a few camera tests, the Pixel 4a may take the lead. Not so much in video, but the SE definitely takes the cake on a few other things like the water resistance, the wireless charging. I'm sure the software updates, you'll get 6 years of updates on the SE. You'll get 3 years with the
Gen
4A.
1 SE is still being supported.
Yeah, that says a lot about software support. So it really comes down to like how much do you hate bezels? And 3 years of updates is not great, but considering the futuristic look, I mean, it's kind of hard to if someone liked this phone and they came to me and said, "Hey, I found this 4A, it's $350. It offers this kind of screen, this kind of camera. Is there a reason I should go with an iPhone? Is there an iPhone that can beat this?" I'd be like, not really. I mean, you'd have to compromise on something if you went with an iPhone, and you'd end up paying more. So unless you went the refurbished or used route, which is a whole nother can of worms. But yeah, I think when it just comes to overall, including cost factor, which in previous Android reviews, I'm always like, this phone's great, but you could get an iPhone for that price, and I prefer iOS.
Yeah.
Whereas this, I can't say that. So
I think
that makes it overall, I think, kind of Android's best. This is the thing that exists that I can't really come up with a great counter argument to when it comes to iOS alternative.
So my as an outsider who again has never used Android, so take that for what it is. I would say that the extra money that you would get towards an SE, if cost is a factor. I want a brand new 2020 phone. Should I get the Pixel or should I get the iPhone? My argument for iPhone still is if cost is a factor, then you have to look at ecosystem and which one are you a part of. I will still very happily pay the additional $500 or $50 to $100 to $150 if cost is still a factor. But
sure.
I got a MacBook or I have an iPad or I have an Apple Watch.
Right.
Obviously, if you have things that complement the iOS itself, like the Apple Watch, then you definitely want to stay in that. But people who
sure.
if they're on the fence about like, well, I mean, this is pretty cheap, and obviously I'm not talking about techies who's going to have multiple phones. Like, I just need something that works. Well, if you had an iPhone in the past, my observation for people who have deviated from the true path. Because I've seen it happen. I've seen people who've deviated, who's strayed from their relationship with Apple, but they always come back. They weren't faithful for like maybe a couple months or a year, but they're like, no, I was young and just naive back then. The ecosystem, it's like I feel like you're paying into the ecosystem at that point, in the sense that besides software support, which is encompassed with the ecosystem, Apple Pay, or not Apple Pay, I'm sorry, Apple Card. You get Apple Card even on an iOS.
It's mostly iMessage, I think. That's the main thing.
Dude, if iMessage had to cost something just to solidify your spot in it, the cheapest of like what, $50 to just, it's worth it. FaceTime. I don't think anything competes with FaceTime. My mom, for example, very big, never used an iPhone, and she acknowledges that like there are things. She's a prime example of someone who does not care about the bells and whistles, and she's like, I just want an iPhone at this point. The iMessage is great. She likes the media stuff that you can send back and forth. That's more that's not compressed, and
right.
She likes FaceTime.
You don't have to go through a third party like Messenger, or WhatsApp, and download all this other stuff,
or something that gives you ads. Something that gives you it's just bloatware even at that point.
Except Apple gives us ads now.
Apple, they do. Well, I don't get those ads. I don't get what you get. And now I jinxed it.
I don't know why you don't get them, but I get the TV Plus and News Plus and Arcade stuff.
Did you cancel them? Is that why?
I haven't canceled TV Plus, but I still get ads for that. I still technically have an active subscription despite never paying for it.
Same.
I did cancel News Plus. I used it for about 20 minutes and then gave up.
Where are you getting the ads at? Is it on your phone or is it like on Mac?
It's like push notifications, yeah. Or when you open the app, if you open Apple News, it's like for $9.99 or TV Plus will send me push notifications and that kind of crap. So Apple's guilty of it too now, but it is interesting that when we come to this point, it really just comes down to the software battle. When it comes to hardware, really, really hard to come up with an iOS alternative to this because the screen's epic. The stereo speakers are excellent. It charges fast. It's USB-C, which I prefer. And the cameras are decent. It's just all around
you got
really,
fingerprint
really
reader.
impressive. Yeah. I'm not in love with the rear placement, but it works now that my fingerprint is actually readable.
Now you're normal like the rest of us, so you have to find a little more. Dude, especially in quarantine state, this pandemic where everything's a mask, I miss Touch ID. So look at this. I'm gonna here's what I've been playing around with this week. Ready? My wife's first iPhone 5S Gold.
Whoa,
look at that. That's a throwback. She's cleaning. She's been going through her stuff, and I'm helping her kind of recycle some stuff like that, and so I used the fingerprint and dude, I honestly I miss it. Like I love the convenience of Face ID. I don't love the Face ID with the mask and stuff now. I hate that. One more.
Do you think because of the pandemic, Apple's probably reconsidering introducing Touch ID under the display now?
I hope so.
Because some people were convinced that was happening regardless. I wasn't. Apple seemed like the type to go all in on one biometric and just say, no, this is the way we're going. But I'm sure from patents we've seen, they definitely have prototypes with Touch ID under the screen. Android competitors have been doing it for years now. It's not new tech.
Right.
But I think Apple, just for the sake of simplicity and manufacturing efficiency, didn't want to have both because they're rather just stick with one. You only need one. Apple's not about options. But now, seeing how long the pandemic's lasting, and now with all these fires, masks are multi-use products.
I would say if they did do it, which I can see that happening, I would say that's coming to the iPad Pro first.
Really?
Yeah.
Why the iPad?
Because now the trend that I've seen, they lean towards putting it on the iPad first, and I feel if it's a cost thing, they can justify increasing the cost on an iPad before they would want to do it on an iPhone, and then they can kind of like test it that way. Two, I feel like if Apple was to do Touch ID display like on the display itself, I believe they would be really Apple about it, and you could put your thumb anywhere type of a thing.
Oh man,
what better place to kind of first push the boundaries with it than when you hold the iPad and they put it all over the corners or something on the thing. Speaking of iPad, another throwback, just retro. Not only was my my wife's 5S, her iPad 2.
Oh yeah,
the iPad.
I still have
2.
one of those.
I forgot she had it. I forgot what this looked like, and I'm like, wow, we've come a long way. It's just interesting.
Yeah, we have.
I'm definitely in an iPad mood this week, but I would say that I think I feel like they do it something not drastic, but they do something to the iPad first, and then it roll it out to the iPhone, and maybe Touch ID should come back. I believe, in my opinion, the idea of going all in, I like that philosophy. It's like, no, you only get one option. Here you go. I like the simplicity of that. A pandemic's going on, so
yeah. Sounds like we might be wearing these masks for a while.
Hey, I know we talked about it offline, but even if hey, you can take your masks off now, I think I'm gonna stick to wearing my masks. A little.
Yeah, me too.
A little more.
Me too.
I feel cleaner. Like I sweat with the condensation in my mouth. Talking is different, but like when I'm outside, I've noticed I haven't really got like a cough or anything weird.
Sure.
So I feel cleaner, even if
just
it's
feels
psychological.
safer anyway.
Yeah.
But I feel like the iPads aren't used outside as much when people are wearing their mask, whereas the iPhone would be. That's why.
That's a good point.
And the iPad being so much larger and kind of being used as more in like
that's a good point.
On the couch or as in a keyboard setup. Maybe because the Magic Keyboard isn't expensive enough already, they could build it into that like a MacBook interface.
That would be cool. I would love that. I would genuinely love that. That would be so cool. Because you're right. It doesn't go outside. But not for lack of trying. I see some people still try to really push the whole, no, you want to film outside. I saw somebody unironically in San Diego, completely unironically, use their iPad to like film like their own little like indie project.
Sure.
And so I had to, and this was maybe about a year ago, maybe less. I go, why would you do that? I said, hey, I want you to know, like,
that?
Why would you do that? Like, I'm a fan of iPhones myself, and I like to push myself by recording as much as possible on my phone. But why the iPad? The camera's inferior. It's harder to like because he's freehanding it. It's like it's not stabilized or anything like that. And the guy was just like, honestly, it's just I want a monitor, a playback monitor I can see, and I don't want to go like this. I'm like,
it's kind of nice. I've done it a few times. It's kind of handy to be able to view the full frame, the full resolution as you're recording, whereas the iPhone you typically don't see or notice it.
You should probably sidecar iPhone then instead of the Mac.
Let the iPad be a preview monitor for the iPhone camera. That'd be kind of dope.
Yeah.
How could they figure that out?
Yeah.
I don't know. But I could see them still prioritizing Touch ID in the iPhone first, just because Face ID came to the iPhone originally.
Sure.
And the use case I find myself in is when I'm at like the grocery store wearing a mask and I want to do Apple Pay and that kind of thing, and I've got the mask on. And so I think the phone would definitely... They're probably second guessing it now. I'm sure they're having the same discussions we are. We're like, no, they want to go all in on Face Unlock, but some people want Touch ID to come back. But this pandemic is probably making them think about it twice now. They're like, okay, maybe we should consider it, because I used to say, don't need it to come back, don't want it, Face ID's better. But now, seeing the world we're in, I'm like, I can get behind it. I can understand
your
why.
psoriasis is gone, so you can really actually appreciate Touch ID to be more reliable and stable for you. And I think that's important. I always, I felt bad that you couldn't get the full experience with it.
I would still use Face ID most of the time.
I like Face ID for it cuts out that step where it's like, authenticate, like your password.
Rest your finger.
Yeah. It just does it. Every time I open up, like I will use Face ID 10 out of 10 times when I'm going on my bank, Like
for sure. Banking, passwords, all that kind of stuff. When it just, you go straight to the website and it automatically starts searching.
I love
that kind of thing.
Yeah. Load your password or your auto load for your password keychain and everything. Because sometimes lately I've been doing, we talked about security a few episodes ago, and to touch on that, I've caught myself. I've been doing this probably for about a little over a year now. When I create a new account with something, I will use the recommended Apple password keychain thing. That's just a bunch of scrambled letters and numbers and stuff. And I'm like, all right, well, now nobody's getting in this sucker. Not me, not you. That's so. And it wasn't until they did sign in with Apple, Apple.com or whatever, as the authenticator. I'll do that now because I like that as well. I don't actually want to give my email away, but before that happened, I've been using that, and the idea of just like you open the site and it just reads, boom, go. Touch ID should be almost like a two-step authentication with Apple Pay, in the sense that you go, like, it reads your face and or like, oh, you want to pay with Apple Pay? Double click and I only like this. I did not like this phone because it did not have NFC at that point, but now I know the SE did. Otherwise, I would have stuck with this phone.
Oh, that's right.
I forgot about that. I want to be able to like hold it in and not look at it like, put it back on, go. I just want to like hold it down, and then this two-step factor authentication can be a second biometric, which would be a thumb. I know it's actually not a good idea to do two versions of the same type of password. So like biometrics and another biometrics isn't technically two-factor. It's one factor doing it twice on different things. But the idea of being able to use just another form of it is a good security measure. If you're wearing a mask, which I think now worldwide, like you said, I think they're kind of, I wouldn't be surprised if it comes back. And I think that's why even SE Gen 2 is going to be as popular as it is for people who are just regular people. They don't really care. Hey, it's all that encompassing. It's not going to hurt the sales of anything.
Probably not. Don't think so. I could see it. Well, they need something big for 2021. I can already tell that next year is going to be really, really boring iPhone leaks, because this year's pretty major comparative to prior years, with the updated design language, new form factors, new screen sizes. And if anyone's listening or watching and thinking, I don't think the iPhone 12 sounds that interesting, you're going to be really bored for the next decade, because this is as good as it gets.
Yeah.
This is about as major. If it's people have been like, oh, it's just a design change.
Yeah.
Ignoring the A14 chip or the updated batteries or the modems or that kind of thing. Like, this is about as big as an upgrade as it can get. 2021, all that we really know is like they might do 120 hertz that year. They might do Touch ID is back, and they might do no port. So if that's all we have to look forward to, imagine how boring 2022 is going to get in 2023. Right. It's just going to get more and more stale. So, I could see them getting to the point of just like, we need something. We got to get people excited for something, and people want Touch ID, so let's just bring it back. That way they can't really complain about it anymore, because some people don't like Face ID.
Do you think they'll start focusing? Let's talk about Apple in the next decade. Let's talk 2020 to 2029.
It's so impossible. What will they be worth in the next decade if they're at $2 trillion now?
10 trillion. I don't know. Do you think Apple's maybe new approach, since the smartphone innovations are, they're starting to plateau? You can't come out with a banger every single year. And if foldables is the future, then we'll start focusing more on EVs going. All right, but okay.
If foldables are the future, we're going to retire from phone topics.
So my question is, in the next 10 years, do you think on a sales pitch type of idea, push software more, or do you think they'll try to come up with different ways to make hardware feel invigorated? So we talk about in-display Touch ID, fingerprint reader, and the other one I could think of that's hardware and software equivalent is a portrait mode version bokeh video that they'll give you. I could see that happening. Outside of that, redesign home screen again, new widgets. At this point, it's like I feel like they would be forced. They put them just the way it works. They'll focus more on software, but not on the phone. Software for the overall ecosystem, that everything is just continuity. The handoff, which is why we're seeing Mac OS look more like iPad OS, which looks more like iOS. It's the fusion of everything. I believe that I don't think bezel-less iMacs or matte finishes on displays or nano LED technology.
Nano texture.
I don't think those are selling points or anything, because that comes out of true cost for those types of products. But software, on the other hand, I mean, the imagination is the limit at that point, and what you're accepting. I think they'll push software for the next 10 years more than anything else.
Yeah, I think that's what they got going for them. Just like our 4A versus SE discussion, it's like it really comes down to what's on the screen mattering much more than the screen itself. And I think in the next 10 years, which is really a wild card, we're most likely going to see glasses and more augmented reality type
that's
investment.
True. Yeah, you're right. I didn't even think about that. That's
software. It's still software.
But the glasses themselves will be their new wearable push. I forgot about that.
There's that. I think. I don't think that's going to take away from everything else, though, because I'm still in the boat. I'm still not convinced it's going to start at $500. I could be wrong on that. I would love to be wrong on that, but I still think the glasses are. They're going to have a hard time making them mainstream compared to the Apple Watch. I think the Apple Watch was a lot easier to sell people on. Because you could watch videos of it and understand that, I know what using a phone is like. You're taking phone display, making it smaller, and that's how it looks. That's how the user interface behaves. I've worn watches before and that kind of thing. Whereas glasses are just taking wearables to such a different level of personal, like being on your face, and you have to be seen with them now, and the way they look and the way they behave and the way you interact with the AR stuff. I think they'll have a harder time making that mainstream compared to the Apple Watch, because it's such a different market that they haven't been in before.
Sure.
That it's not going to replace the phone. I don't think people understand AR correctly when they're like, this will replace the iPhone in a few years. It's like, it really can't, mostly because of keyboard and camera. That's very difficult to replace with glasses, of like typing in dead air or trying to take a selfie with your glasses somehow. I don't think it's going to replace anything, honestly. If anything, it might bump up against the watch a little bit, but I think it'll be significantly more than the watch, and the watch will have more health emphasis than the glasses. But I could see, I haven't talked about this much, but I see Samsung really trying to push DeX, the phone turns into a desktop type thing. And I've seen it demoed, and I'm not that impressed, because most of the time it feels like you're just changing the aspect ratio of my phone to 16:9, and it's still phone apps that are just kind of blown up and not really optimized well. But seeing Apple make the transition now to Apple Silicon with the Mac lineup, I bet Apple, if they wanted to tackle that idea of, processors in our phones are getting so dang fast and powerful now that we can't even come up with great uses for them other than camera. We needed the A13 chip for 3 cameras. It was required. What are we going to do for A14, 15, 16? What use case are you going to play? Not Fortnite, but are you going to play Minecraft at 130 FPS or something? I don't know.
Are you going to play Minecraft?
Yeah, are you going to play games at 240 FPS? Like, what are they going to do with that? I could see someday them coming up with, like you said, the ecosystem simplicity of being able to rest your phone down and have it wirelessly take over some external monitor. And now you've got Mac OS being powered off of the iPhone and kind of go from I'm using my phone and then I can switch it into a desktop because, they're obviously optimizing Final Cut and Logic to work on Apple Silicon. So if the iPhone processors get that fast that they're capable of running it, all you really need is a larger piece of hardware to work with. I bet we could see that by the end of the decade. I'm not saying next year or the next couple of years, but maybe the 5 to 8 year mark we'll start seeing Apple try to.
I would love to see a DeX. I loved that. I loved the concept of that. Obviously, execution's different, but I haven't
been in love with the execution of it so far, but I think Apple could do it better than anyone because Samsung isn't really an expert in making desktop operating systems. They kind of make skins.
Yeah, I see. Like the one I loved is like you could there's a slot and it just clicks into it, and then that now is the computer, and then when you're for my gamers, because I've been doing it lately myself, it reminds me of the Nintendo Switch. Just take it when you're done, on the go. Sure. It's the same everything. Dock it when you're home. Use the peripherals as needed. And since iPad, for example, it lets you pair the peripherals and all that with mouse and keyboard too. It's probably just a switch of a button, so to say, for the iPhone to do the same thing. And I think if Apple was to do that right, it tells because it tells me, like, I don't want to say it, but they're not gonna listen to one man's word anyway, so it doesn't matter. But everything that I know about Mac OS and like my pro applications that I bought and all that, it's all gonna go away, and I have to rebuy everything because it's gonna be a single service. Again, that just goes to just follows the iCloud account. It doesn't follow the operating system anymore. It just follows the account. And sure, it'd be cool to have pro applications on your iPhone. Maybe if you wanted to edit something that like in motion or what have you, I can see that being kind of convenient maybe in the moment. But definitely more practical on screen real estate like the iPad Pro, and then
keyboard and mouse,
all that is definitely more accessible. But the idea that it can be used on the iPhone just because it's all one and the same, because I got the iPhone here being filmed, I got you right here, iPad, iMac, and they're three separate devices. Are you getting it? These are not 3 separate OSs. And I like the idea of that being able to push, and it follows whatever the intuitiveness of it knows what's being paired to what and it's using it. But then I'm also sad because it's like, man, I have to rebuy a lot of applications again, but
all right. Maybe I don't know how they'll handle the billing of it, but you're right. I could see, as Apple wants to become more of a services company, taking away certain full-time purchases and turning them more into a monthly thing. Adobe did it with Creative Cloud.
Yeah,
and I bet they could do it really competitively. I don't think they would charge $10 a month for Final Cut. I'd be surprised if they did, given it used to be $300 or $200 with the education bundle. So that would be like 20 months worth.
Yeah,
and then you're paying more. But if they did it kind of like how TV Plus ended up being the cheapest streaming service out there. Imagine if Final Cut was like $5 a month. I'd be pretty impressed with that.
60 a year is so.
Or maybe an annual option for those long term, 50 a year.
I would love to, if it's one of, it's sad. You and I both know for us and people like. It's like, all right, that's the cost of business, and it's you're gonna pay for it because we need it, and I think bundling it is annual bundle, the whole thing. Here's your like maybe a 50 a year or 40, whatever number, arbitrary number that's significantly cheaper than Adobe, significantly cheaper than Microsoft Office, significantly cheaper than anything else. We're going to give you iWork applications back when they were called iWork. We'll give you those for free still. And then so you had iWork for their Office competitor, and then they had iLife. iLife is what they used, and that was GarageBand, iPhoto, and Pixelmator or something. Not Pixel, but what's the other one? Anyway, but the point is, so you imagine
iMovie,
GarageBand. Oh my goodness, GarageBand, iMovie, iPhoto. And so you take all 6 of those applications, put them again together, really beef them up, and maybe they phase out. I mean, maybe they phase out 1 or 2. I think they'll keep GarageBand as like an introductory, like, hey, it's free, whatever. But everything else, they really beef up that package again like they did back in the early 2000s, and they sell it to you again. But this time, if you buy it as a bundle, annual subscription, I would pay $50. I use a lot of those products anyway. The only ones I don't really use is Keynote or GarageBand, but that's because I upgraded GarageBand. I use Numbers for budgeting. I use Pages to actually like do documents and stuff like that. And everything is, I can just convert and sign on the tablet. So I could see that happening. I think people would get behind that if they had to do it, just because it's like, well, the alternative is you're paying so much more for dedicated applications like Microsoft Office or Adobe Creative Cloud,
right?
And it's like $200 a year or something. If it's the cost of doing business, then part of the cost of doing business is like, all right, where can we save money?
I want
then?
all these things to remain free or single time purchase as a personal like. From a business perspective and a financial
grandfather
advice perspective,
you in.
I want them to grandfather me in because I paid for it, and I would hate if they were just like, now it's going to cost money if you want to keep getting software updates and that kind of thing. I hate that, but it's kind of my fear, I guess, that Apple's trying to become more of a services brand, and they're trying with this News Plus and Arcade thing. They're trying to do new things and charge for it, but if it's not going to work out, are they going to start now charging for things that used to be included? Because they want to be more services oriented, and they're not finding much success when they try new things that people can subscribe to. They're like, okay, well, let's just start adding a price tag to what we already are successful with, like iMessage or Final Cut. Or
Drew, would you pay for News Plus just so you don't have to pay for pro applications? Like, oh no, if this doesn't work, if this doesn't work, they're going to take it out of something else. I might have to pay for News Plus so they don't touch my Final Cut or Logic.
I don't know. I might have to budget, see what would end up costing more in the long run.
Yeah,
I don't know. See which one ended up taking more money out of my pocket.
Mean.
But
it's like the cable companies. You can only get this price for internet if you use our cable. All right. Well, I'm not going to turn it on. No, but you have to turn it on.
Yeah, that exact same thing happened at our house. They were like, in order for your internet to turn on, you have to activate your cable TV box. And I was like, we don't want cable TV. The only reason we have it is because you said you would charge us $50 a month extra to just get internet and not cable TV. It's so backwards. I don't get it at all. They're thinking I'm going to fall in love with the cable, but they don't know me very well. They don't.
I would turn on the cable, and then take the box, thump, trash day.
Yep.
Beep.
That's
Gone.
pretty much exactly what we did. We had to turn it on for the activation, and then we shut it off, and we haven't touched it since then.
It's so ridiculous that's where bundling goes wrong. If you're gonna charge me that much more, bundling, like, there's an art to making it work, right? Like, you can bundle your music subscription plan or YouTube subscription plan. You can bundle it and actually like make multiple platforms or multiple devices. And multiple accounts. Okay, we can find a way to split up and divvy the cost. That works. We're gonna charge you an additional $50 if you only use the internet. Okay.
Yeah.
Rag.
They have they have some theory that they're going to get their money back because I'm going to pay for more TV channels, but I don't think they understand the Gen Z market very well. They're like, no, we don't do that anymore.
You can definitely see a boomer still in control of that company because that's just it's a dying breed. When they run the Nielsen family, whatever, where they pull the data up to see which. Wow, the Ericssons haven't watched anything.
Yeah. They haven't watched anything. That's it. But I could see Apple wanting to get, I think I've always kind of alluded to it as an inevitable future that I don't think long term we'll be able to buy things outright.
It is inevitable.
It is inevitable. I think Apple's going to push it as you're saving so much because you don't have to pay these large upfront fees for the watch or the iPhone or the Mac anymore. But they're pushing the monthly stuff so much that in the future I feel like ownership of products is going to slowly die out because it'll short term bring more people in to see prices this low that instead of AirPods being $160 or $250, they're now $10 a month, $20 a month, and eventually everything's just around this one iCloud. And the monthly cost of it goes up or down depending on how many products you're using, but you never truly own anything outright.
Yeah.
I don't like it. I'm not saying I want that to happen. I just see it happening. I just see that being our future.
Do you remember when Tim Cook was doing that interview a couple years ago? It was like, well, it's $1 a day. I'm like, oh, no, don't do that. Don't do that, Tim. Don't do that. And
it's only the price of a cup of coffee an hour.
If you go to Starbucks.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. The moment you start to you make comparisons like that, it's like, oh, it's about $1 a day. It's less than $1 a day. No. That's very sales pitchy when I'm trying to buy a car.
It is.
Like I don't want to hear that.
But that's kind of how they see it because they have to provide software updates for years on these things, and all that software development and their engineering teams are costing money and getting paid and testing things and adding new features. So for them, that's why I always said the profitability of iPhones is it's not equated by just looking at the cost of the parts.
Yeah.
For one, there's R&D in the development and the testing and the beta, the prototyping of the phones before they get mass produced, and working with supply chains and how much money that costs. It's like, okay, you're just looking at if all the parts already existed and you just needed to assemble them. This is how much the iPhone costs. It's something like $300, $400, and they charge $1,000 for it. It's like, yeah, they make way too much money, but the amount of money that is continuously spent on that iPhone, even after delivery, continues.
Yeah.
It keeps going. They're spending money right now on the first generation SE because it's getting software updates. Those software engineers don't work for free. They all cost money, and all that testing and all the computers they work with to see how it works and how it handles certain features. So Apple's going to try to, I think, swing that in the future, like you said, with the $1 a day thing. Is like, it costs us daily to support these things, so we're going to start charging daily.
Yeah.
And that will, in the short term, feel like a deal. In the short term, it's going to feel like you're saving money because people will see iPhone 11 Pro Max or 12 Pro Max isn't $1,100, it's $70 a month. And people go, oh, 70 a month. I have $70 a month. That's not that bad. But it just keeps on going and it doesn't stop. And that's how Apple makes more off you in the long run. But
I feel
that's how business works.
That's how business works. So if you guys think Apple stock is overpriced now, get in while you still can. Get in while the getting is still good. So
when is the split?
Next week at the end of the month, I think.
Oh wow, it's coming up. Okay.
I think it's at the end of the month. Yeah.
Jeez.
It's coming. Part of Apple's genius, at least let me say, if they for conversation value here, I'm gonna play devil's advocate and say why they wouldn't go that way, because part of Apple's genius is it came from Steve himself, that we are the biggest startup in the world, and what he meant by that, and I don't think some people understand, but I don't think what people took away from, like, oh, we treat it like one big startup. They have no problem cannibalizing sales of one product for another, because at the end of the day, there's only one bottom line of number. There might be different projects. Like, oh, I want to be part of the iMac team. I want to be part of the Final Cut team. There are teams that are working on it, but at the end of the day, it's not their own funding that goes into it. It's Apple as a whole. Where do we need to allocate the money? And if they can pull resources from one thing to help fund another, then they will do that because it's not going to hurt them any. And a best example of them doing that is what, $400 or $700 wheels for the Mac Pro. Like, they know that's a silly thing, but they're like, all right, well, we can pull it from here and the fund's there. And not only does it then keep the luxury brand intact, but they could just do silliness and stuff like that. And so that's obviously an extreme example, but they can use their money basically however they want, because when you think of a small business, a startup, they only got one pot of money, and they're like, okay, we got to do it for here, and they just adjust more fluid that way. They probably, if they don't move to an all subscription version of their products and services, it's because the Apple Music is doing so well. The iPhone sales are still doing so well. It's because now Apple Card is paying for people who don't. You and I could sit here and tell these guys, hey, pay off your card every single month. It's the right thing to do. And most people might listen to that, but then there's some people who just can't or they won't. Apple's going to profit from that. And I feel as long as they have more money coming in than they do going out as the biggest startup in the world, I can see them kind of dragging their feet about moving towards that direction, especially if other phone companies or, big tech companies do start doing that. Because then Apple could be competitive. Like, hey, you own it or you bought it out. It's a one-time cost. Final Cut and Logic, it's yours. I gotta watch how I say that. That's not really the case because I own this. No, you don't own the software. But the point is, it's a one-time payment, right? And so now they're competitive in that way. iMac or Mac OS is now competitive because if you need to do hard, intense work, we have products for that. It's a one-time payment. We're saving you money, and our software is better. Or that's how they'll sell it to you, right? Our software is better. It's more stable. I could see them being competitive because there's only one bottom line at the end of the day. So devil's advocate would say that if they don't do that, they can still pitch hey, we're just one company. We don't really care about the money. It was never our intent to be the most profitable. Yeah, but look what happened. Yeah.
I hope you're right, because I don't want to subscribe to everything. I want to be able to buy things outright. I prefer that. And I think it's interesting though how there's something different about iPhone that you, me, and Nick, when he was alive, would buy the new iPhone every year. But we don't really do that with any other Apple product. You notice that? Like, we don't do that with the watch, the iPad, the Mac. But the iPhone, for some reason, we're all like, no, I want to get the latest one day one right away. I'm pre-order night. I'm going to be there. And for me, that's pretty much the only Apple product this year I plan on buying and keeping. Everything else, I'm like, doesn't sound terribly interesting. But like, which brings another good question. Do you think you'll ever reach a point? Because you've been, how long have you been buying the latest iPhone every year?
Ooh, yeah. Since 2009.
Wow. 11 years. It's been a while.
It's been a while.
I was going to say, I can't say the same. I haven't been doing it that long.
iPhone 4 would be... Oh, no. I'm sorry. That's not true. I never got the 4S. So after 4S...
you got 5S, 6, 6S, 7.
It became an annual, and at first it wasn't even intentional because that's back when 2-year contracts were still a thing. But I was just so overzealous. I'd see my friends, getting a new phone, and I just it does what now? Oh, that has a Siri. I want a Siri. Oh, yeah. That one has an actual 16:9 display. I want that. Oh, this one is 64-bit instead of 32.
Touch ID.
Touch ID. Oh, after iOS 7 came out, like I can tell you, the iOS 7 forward is when I intentionally was like, I'm going to be doing this every year. Before then, it was just circumstantial. I was in the right place at the right time. Like, yeah, you know what? I'll do it. But after iOS 7 happened, I intentionally made it a point to like get every new iPhone. Yeah.
Could you see that ever stopping?
Yes. Yeah.
He answers right away. Yes.
Yeah.
You're like, I'm already thinking about not doing it this year.
So we all know I kind of got one of my favorite colors for a modern phone with the midnight green. I'm happy there. I genuinely miss the boxy design. Like, this is my favorite design. This form, this everything, this candy bar looking this is my favorite phone. iPhone 5S, or in this case, or the latest one would be SE Gen 1, is my favorite modern iPhone, because of Touch ID. I'm a small guy, small hands. I can reach everything, and at least back then, it had 4K camera, no camera bump, headphone jack if you needed it. The only thing I didn't like was that I am completely addicted to wireless charging. It's so convenient. It's in my car. I have to have something with wireless charging. But all things, so maybe not hardware stuff, but design wise, iPhone 5 and 5S were my favorite design. And if I do get this phone this year, the iPhone 12, the small one, it's because I'm going back to that nostalgic feeling. And if bokeh video becomes a thing this year for the pros, like, that's probably the only sure way I will get the biggest iPhone. Otherwise, I don't like upgrading every year. It was a thing when it was more, ooh, new camera. Oh, at this point the cameras are so good. I have challenged myself to take different photos between the 10S and my 11 Pro, and it's not really all that. At night it's noticeable because night mode turns on, or so stuff like that happens. But honestly, I'm okay saving money. I like saving money.
What?
What?
It's law of diminishing returns, right? Every improvement they make, every jump they make, it makes it harder to jump again. It makes it a smaller change year after year after year. So I'm curious how long term they think that's going to work. I think they know it's going to happen. People are going to stop doing this annual thing, and that's why they're pushing services so much. But in the meantime, they're gonna milk the hardware as much as possible. They're gonna see.
What about you?
How
do you feel?
I feel like I'm a weird example because I talk about it for a living and it's kind of my job too. So it's really not a big money loss source for me, because for one, I always sell or trade in my old iPhone, which significantly makes the 12 Pro Max for me won't cost $1,100. It'll cost $500. And also selling old tech all the time, it's going to be, at the end of the day, it's going to cost me more like $300 to $200 to get the latest, biggest iPhone. Yeah. And the amount of videos I get out of it, and the amount of, the unboxings and the reviews and the this many months later and talking about it, using it on the vlogging channel and that kind of thing, it pays for itself for me. But I'm not most people, so I don't consider myself the everyday consumer. In the
scenario that, let's say you just move on from this genre and you move into other things at that point, like, can you see yourself, obviously, maybe I wouldn't say go as far as like justifying it, but would you see yourself like, I'll unbox it, I'll do something, but maybe you're like, all right, I'm not like, you know what I mean when I say this. You're no
like
longer
the Series 5, basically.
You're not emotionally invested in it. It's like, I love, like, we can look at this like, I love this phone, I love it, and all that. But at one point, it's like, I'm not doing that with the Series 5. I'm not doing that with 2020 iPad Pro. I'm not doing that with. I have a 2015 iMac. Like, whatever. I'm not. I don't have that sentimental or emotional investments into it because I use it as a tool. But the iPhone is so personal to you, right? It's so customizable. It's an extension of you.
And we use it for so much these days.
Everything. Yeah. But at one point, it's just like, well, the software's good enough. The battery's good enough. The cameras are good enough. At one point, for me, that I have to. I know I'll hit that point. When is good enough to be like, I will skip this year intentionally? It's a weird. It would be a good challenge and an exercise of the mind for me to try that. My wife gets by. Like. She gets by just fine.
Me too. Mine too.
Oh no, she actively like I want this. Like she, if you guys didn't get the SE,
she was using the 8 Plus and the 10R and said, "Get rid of it. I don't want it. Give me the 6." And then using the 6 said, "Give me a flip phone." You know, she's actively going against.
I want to be that disciplined, just so I can say, if all else, and it might be for ego reasons. I just want to say that like these products don't have that much control over me because right now they do. And I accept it. We're walking, talking, marketing, and products of our environment, and I'm not upset about that. But just as an exercise of the mind, it would be really interesting to see how a year of just going through with the same stuff. How would I feel? Like a type of detox.
I have thought about that. Yeah, I think if careers change or genres changed, I feel I still have an interest in it. Just
sure.
From a very young age, just unboxing and following rumors and then the announcement of the new iPhone. That's just always been tradition and something I'm interested in. So I could even still see myself getting the iPhone every year if I wasn't a tech YouTuber. Again, it depends on my income. But for the foreseeable future, it seems like we'll be okay income-wise.
Yeah, sure.
And I imagine even if I wasn't doing videos on it, still wanting to get it, but I also, a year ago, probably wouldn't have said I'd cancel Apple Music, and here I am canceling Apple Music. So I acknowledge I could change. My preferences are in the future. I could get old enough or wise enough to be like, this isn't a big enough upgrade. I'm going to skip it, or who cares? It could happen.
I think the beauty about your channel, your content, your branding, and you're living proof of this in other aspects, you don't need to have the product to make good review or content about it. And in that sense, I think you're... And also, I got to acknowledge that I'm coming from the stance that what we talked about earlier. I think the next 10 years is going to be focused on software, where hardware might not even matter that much to upgrade. So with that being said, I think the software will still drive the experience forward. So with that context in mind, I can see you, and this is me just kind of, as a friend and as a fan, I'm being selfish here. I can see you doing a challenge like the Portless Challenge or the whatever challenge where the upgrade challenge, and you're going to, for this season, this year of Talos of Tech, I'm going to stick with the same product that I had already and maybe provide as my daily driver a new use case as your own exercise of the mind, and you'll be able to have a different, maybe you'll find things like your output, like, oh, I'm canceling Apple Music. Didn't think I was going to do that a year ago, and now here I am. You might find a new output, and I think admittedly in one capacity of it, I don't see anybody willing in the means to do it choose to not upgrade without their, like, if it's a smaller YouTube channel, oh, okay, so they don't have the means to fund that, but someone's like, oh, I'm choosing not to do this just to, no more than an experiment, even for yourself. I would be interested to see your use case, because I've seen your transition happen from I'm buying every brand new thing to no, I don't need it. And watching that transition for you happen over these last couple years has even made me push the boundaries for myself. And I, back when Nick was alive, I gave him credit for the fact that, it was his idea, like, wow, I really don't need Apple Music. And that's another challenging of the mind. And it's going to be there next year. Like, this stuff's not going away. What's 1 year of my life where I can give myself like a true challenge? And I think if 2020 taught me something this year that I wasn't expecting, is that I like putting myself in a position where I have to get creative in an environment where it might be uncomfortable, and you have to work with what you got, and it forces me to think outside the box. And so on a more philosophical sense of it, it's interesting to see where that path would take me. Sure. While still having all the love in the world, because for about 2 weeks now, Marquez Brownlee will still have the product that I want to see that I'll never buy, and I could still get nice crispy shots on that. I'm like, okay, so that's what that looks like. That's cool. So I get some part of that itch scratched, but I would like, I don't know, software based to me is going to be the driving factor of everything. iPad 2018 is still brand new to me, you know?
Yeah, it does feel, I still use it and I'm amazed by it. Yeah. I have thought about doing big challenges like that. I don't think I would do it next year or maybe not even the year after that. But as software, I think, is going to become more and more important because we're kind of, I feel like the last few decades has been very big hardware battles between how small your phone can get, how thin the bezels can be, how many cameras do you have. And I feel like that's what a lot of the 2010s were, you know, the last 10 years, who could sport all this RAM or all this storage or all this stuff. And it feels like we're kind of maturing in that sense, that all the companies, you know, the fact that this phone with this gorgeous OLED, it's amazing how like edge to edge this is. Yeah. And it's the budget phone. This is the $350 phone now. And imagining what the hardware landscape is just going to look like in another 5 to 10 years, it really is going to become more of a software debate, I think, when it comes down to how Google versus Apple or Samsung or OnePlus handles the software experience on their phone. That's going to almost be a more interesting discussion than this phone has this hardware, this phone has this hardware. You know, like that can only go so far. And I think we're already noticing that, you know, with all the videos that compare 10 different smartphone cameras and they all look basically the same with slightly different. This one's a little overexposed. This one has more saturation than the, you know, it's all getting
side by side comparisons. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like by default, a phone can take a great picture, but then if you put another picture next to it, you can be like, oh, well, now it looks oversaturated. It's like if you would have just looked at the picture by itself, you wouldn't have thought it was oversaturated. Now you've just been presented with another photo that is undersaturated, and now you get to decide one is worse or better than the other. But it all comes down to preference, and of course, over the next few years, all of them are going to get closer and closer to identical. I was just thinking about it yesterday, like, because I had a very lazy, chill. Friday's my day off. I don't work, and Luis doesn't work, and I was just at home using the Pixel nonstop on Twitter and on Discord and YouTube. And stereo speakers sound great. The Taptic on the keyboard feels great, but there's just this clunkiness to Android that I'm very fascinated by because I can't find a great way of articulating it. I think it might have something to do with the animation, or it may have something to do with the internal framework of how Android behaves, or something to do with scrolling, not rubber banding like it does on iOS, where you kind of hit the top and it bounces, whereas on Android it's like stop. And there's something about that just feels messy. It feels rushed. It just feels unthought out and incomplete, right. It doesn't feel, I guess, like what I'm used to, which is why I wonder, like, clearly there's tons of people out there that love Android and use Android every day, and they have no problem with it, and they have issues with iOS, and I'm over here with the exact opposite issue, where I pick up my iPhone and I literally, I don't know how to describe it. I have like a mental breath of fresh air. I literally will pick it up and be like, oh, that feels so much nicer. Just swiping up and switching between channels and scrolling through Twitter and using YouTube. Everything just feels so much better. Like, it feels like you were running in the heat when you're using Android. Like, oh yeah, that's how I do that. Oh, I got to hold this, and this is how I do gestures, and this is how I go back. And then you pick up the iPhone, and it's like jumping in a pool. You're like, ooh, that feels better. That's nice. So I wonder if it's just this is what I grew up with, this is what I'm used to. And because I've never really committed to Android long term, that's why I don't have that comfortability with it. So I wonder if one year, as we get closer to hardware reaching this, what's the term? Singularity?
Yeah.
Everything. All the smartphones become all the notches are gone. All the camera holes are under the screen. Everything's 120 hertz.
This very utopian style.
Yeah. At some point, I think it would be cool to switch to Android for a year and just see how I do. And see, for one, it would make a great video title. I think people would love it. switching to Android for the next 12 months. Everyone would be like, what? You know, you remember my Pixel.
Your thumbnail clickbait, how this is the end of Talos of Tech. Or something.
Yeah. If I
From
wanted
a
to go
certain point of
with it,
view.
I could. Yeah. I wouldn't do that. I would try to make it honest in the title, but it would be very easy to do that. This is goodbye. Yeah. Saying goodbye to the Apple sheet. I'm switching away from iOS. You know, that would get tons of clicks. But
I'm leaving.
No,
I would and then 3 months later, why I came back.
Yeah. Need the little face palm in the thumbnail. No. I would want to, I would want to make it super upfront that I'm only doing it for a year. Like, it's not a permanent change, but just to see, because I think at a certain point, the tech channel is already running out of interesting subjects. I think we'll be able to talk a lot about Apple Silicon for the next couple of years and iPads transitioning to mini LED. But it's easy to realize that Talos of Tech, at least in its full-time format, is still very new.
Sure.
I've only been doing this as my full-time job for about 3 years, which in the grand scheme of things that's not even as long as high school was. You know, that was nothing. And
wow. Yeah.
We're gonna have many, many years if YouTube doesn't change some policy that explodes everything, and you know, or we don't all die.
You're so adamant you're gonna lose your channel.
I'm convinced. Like, seeing how YouTube has changed so drastically in the past 6 to 10 years of making YouTube videos, I feel like it's likely I will lose my channel somehow within the next decade. I almost say it's more likely than the chances are that things will be fine and I'll be doing this in 10 years. Yeah. Like, I don't think I'll lose my audience because I have several platforms to work off of if I need to. But I can move people best I can. Not everyone will move, but I could be like, okay, YouTube's dead. I can move to Twitch, or I could, even if IGTV was the only solution, do something with that, Twitter. You know, there's enough platforms.
Oh. Yeah, I think you're a pioneer. I mean, obviously not a genuine pioneer, but I think you're a pioneer of using Twitch before everybody else. In the form that you do use it in. Discord, you were promoting Discord before I saw other people really jumping on it. You were promoting the Wait. Discord.
That's it.
Twitch.
I'm not that original.
But I'm in the form of tech, in the genre of tech. What you did, like
in our little community, we don't know that many people that were doing it at the time. I guess.
No, everyone was like, "No, YouTube is the way. It is the way. I have spoken." And then that was it. And then I saw you. I mean, it's the same for you. You've always kind of, you know, why Tailosive works. I think I kind of said this before, but I'll remodernize my thought. Tailosive works because you were the first person to, from my eyes, break everything down in separate channels to different platforms to decompartmentalize. Compartmentalize, not decompartmentalize.
Compartmentalize.
Yeah.
I don't think I was the first, but probably in the community I'm in.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
I mean, there's other MC, like Rooster Teeth does that kind of thing. I mean, there's channels I've heard of that do similar things where they kind of go into different genres with different subjects and that kind of, I don't think any of them did it I don't know of anyone who did it with my size. Typically, when you have channel networks like that, it's with bigger brands with lots of people. It's usually not one guy.
A team, a staff.
Yeah. But kind of making one guy in his attic try to act like he has this multi-level brand corporation with multiple different
using keywords like we.
Yeah.
You mean you?
We as in me. Yeah, that kind of thing.
Yeah, so we like to look at this stuff like we. Well, Drew didn't ask me about this, so he's not talking about me. Who's this we he's referring to? I hate Pixel.
Well, I've been trying to be wiser with, spending and how we save and what we invest in for long-term, like, passive income, because I'm treating every paycheck right now as the last.
That's a smart.
channels get hacked, channels get copyright strikes, and the strikes we had to deal with at the beginning of the year that were completely either extortion or unjustified and accidental. And knowing that policies could change so briefly, and seeing whole genres of channels suddenly be like, oh, we used to be able to make money, now we can't. Tech is safe for now, but who's to say it can't change in the future and make every video you made in the past 3 years, like, oh, actually, you were breaking the law all those times, so we have to delete you now. I could totally see that happening.
Retroactively going back and like, oh, now this infringes. Like, oh, wow.
Yeah, that's what Twitch was doing. That's
that's ridiculous.
With the copyright strikes.
Yeah.
Or the I'm trying to think of a good example. Basically, just channels that used to make content for children. Yeah. That used to be a whole genre, and then the new COPPA laws were put into place, and they're just like, oh, actually, you can't make money off that anymore. Sorry.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying, there's reasons behind that, but I'm just saying the simplicity of a policy change that results in people's career just falling
especially
apart.
When it's a private company. It's a they're not beholden to the same government laws that we have in the workforce.
Even public companies can do that. I mean, it's their platform. That's the thing.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean by private, in the sense that, like, when I think of public, like public service, government work is more public service.
Yeah, they're not owned by the government. Yeah,
yeah. These companies have every right, because you signed the agreements, those terms of services, to treat you like you're Fortnite.
Yeah. It's almost like when you're using someone else's platform for your own gain, you have to abide by their rules and prepare for
gross. Oh, what?
I think YouTube just has a monopoly. That's the problem.
I don't think monopoly means what you think it means, Drew.
Right.
You keep using that word like you think you're using it right. A monopoly.
Well, I think it's just a very safe... I would say this to all content creators out there. I think it's just a very safe assumption to make going into it, that you should not take these types of income streams in this platform for granted and assume that it's always going to be here.
For sure.
I think you really should understand how quickly people have lost everything, and how quickly YouTube is like, oh, this violates our community guidelines, you're gone.
Yeah.
Just realize that they can change so fast, and laws can come up that suddenly make whatever your career is unreasonable, and it's dangerous to assume that it will always be here. So basically, enjoy it while you can. And
this is why Drew's going to Android. And this is how we got here.
Yeah. I'm going into the next decade assuming something bad will happen to YouTube, or just my channel in specific, in the next 10 years, and I'll lose it all. I'm just going to expect that. If it doesn't happen, wonderful. That's great, because I have issues with YouTube, but I overall love it. I enjoy it. I have fun with it, and I would like it to stick around. I like the system we have going with it, but I'm not going to count on it. I'm not going to assume it's always going to be here.
I think your pessimistic point of view is your version of, like, I want to be pleasantly surprised if I can make this work. So I'll be pleasantly surprised if it's only $200 this year. Instead, I'll be pleasantly surprised if this decade I still have a job. If I still get an income from Google.
Yeah.
See, you're going to get the Team Pixel Boy shirt.
If Google decided you can't say bad things about their phones on YouTube.
Oh, you're done for.
And you said bad things about our phone 3 years ago, so
you're done.
You're in trouble. You can't do that.
Scrubbing the scratches off the phone. Like, I got it.
I got it, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think...
I don't know what phone I would try, but probably a really nice one. Probably an S20 or a OnePlus or something.
Yeah, how's the phone treating you? The OnePlus that you're using? How's that working?
Well, I pretty much only used it for the face cam of the podcast, but
that's it?
That's the most part. I've actually, after using the 4A, I really prefer having the flat edges. I realized after using this for a few hours, then going to the 8 Pro, I hate the curved edge thing. It's stupid. I think companies need to get over that. They keep thinking it looks futuristic and cool, and it just looks distorted. It looks annoying, and something about having the flat edges, but with the thin bezel, just looks way more clean and natural to me. Obviously, it looks more iPhone-like. That's probably what it is, but to me, at least.
when you acknowledge that, I can't believe you're fanboying over a Pixel this week. It's weird. It's like, I like this one more. It's I never thought you are changing, Drew. You are definitely. Question about the Pixel for you. What's your favorite thing about it so far? Is it the camera? Is it the battery? Is it just the OLED? Like what do you like about it the most right now?
I think the display. I mean, obviously, I think the price is the biggest thing. But if we're talking just the hardware, the display is insanely impressive. It's close to single size bezel all the way around. Like, there's a little bit of a chin, but for the most part, it's just like the cleanest, minimalistic design that more smartphones, I think, should lean towards. The back is very basic. Yeah. It's just fingerprint reader, camera, Google logo, and that's it. And I like that about the SE, and I like that about this, and the fact that they were able to do it for cheaper. And I thought the SE was already really cheap. For relatively speaking, it's affordable, but there's still a lot of people out there where $300 is a lot, and I get that. It's an expensive purchase for some. So seeing that people that don't have that much disposable income or just aren't that interested in dropping that much money on phones can have such premium hardware now with a display this big and this clean looking is like, wow, this is how far we've come. Imagine what the future holds for us. So I am very curious about the 4A XL and the 5G, but I don't think they need to exist. I think this is all Google should make, is like $350 entry phones. I don't think they need to make 5G phones or larger big phones. Like, just stick with this, Google. This is what you're good at.
Is the refresh rate 120 or is it 60?
It's 60.
Okay.
That's to be expected at this price, but obviously, yeah, in the future, that would be nice if they bumped it up to 90, 120, but I can't complain at this price.
You're going to be so heartbroken if our refresh rate this year for iPhones is still 60.
I have come to terms with it. I expect it now. Seeing the leaks around it in the display supply chain saying that the iPhone 12 doesn't have the IC drivers for 120 hertz means that there is actually a hardware issue. Meaning that they can't really turn it on via software at this point. So I'll do a video on that in a bit. But I don't think it's a good idea. I think they're severely behind. So when people, oftentimes I complain about Samsung or Google saying something they did first or they didn't, or I complain that they don't have this in 2020. You're like, well, Apple didn't have this in 2018. And I'm like, okay. Yeah, that's also bad. What do you want? Just because something Apple did, that's somehow my fault, or that somehow neutralizes my point. Like, what do you want me to say? Yes, iPhone 7 should have had wireless charging. I agree. They were late on that. That doesn't change. That's why we call it Telos of Tech and not Apple Sheep, is because we're trying to separate. Yeah, we can have preferences, we can have opinions, we can be biased, but we can still separate the brand from the company we like and say, I prefer this company, but they're not perfect and they do things wrong. So, yeah, there's all kinds of stuff like that.
If they came out and surprised us with a refresh rate of 120 or maybe 90, but for sake of the question, 120, and it's only on that highest end model that you get, is that? Yeah, because that's the one you're going to lean towards anyway. You're like,
I would get that one regardless.
Honestly, I feel like if that's the only differentiating factor between that and the other models, I don't think it'd be enough to get me to go to it. I love the promotion I get on the iPad, but it's not the driving force of why I love iPad. And I feel like I would have that same mentality on iPhone. I want iPhone's focus to be on hardware wise. I want them to improve. You think I'm going to say camera, and I'm not. I want them to improve. I want them to improve Face ID drastically. I want Face ID to work at more angles. Like what you could do to the iPad, put it on my darn phone, please.
Oh, I know. That would be much nicer.
I expect, and maybe this is my, I expect cameras to get better every year. So
Sure.
that's
for granted.
Yeah, that's not me like, I want a better camera this year and that's the only way I'm going to upgrade. No, I expect that to happen. I expect there to be, same or better battery life and or a better processor, all that. Those are expect. I want Face ID to be faster, better, and in the way that he's wearing a mask, immediately go to pass, because it doesn't do it automatically for me. It still takes its time.
Yeah.
It just So I want Face ID to
Or
get
I wonder
better.
if they could find a slightly, maybe less secure way to make it work with the mask.
True. Oh, that'd be nice. But there you go. Make it better. Like that's in my opinion, that's a version of making
They'll say
it better.
it needs the A14 chip in its advanced neural engine is the only way we can make it work with the mask. But it'll mainly rely on your eyebrows and your eyes, and you'll be like, okay, we have less points of data, but it's still fairly secure.
So here's what I did. I took the mask and I made another face profile.
Did it work?
Yep.
Oh, it did work. Okay. Nick said he tried that and it didn't work.
Well, he's holding it wrong.
Yeah. Maybe because he dropped it. Yeah. Oh.
Yeah, probably. He probably dropped it.
Maybe that's what it is. You got a new iPhone, though. So
yeah. Oh,
he already sold it.
I thought it was caught on camera. I was hoping it was caught on camera for people to see when he dropped it and he screamed. He screamed so bad. I caught him earlier that day or later on that day. He goes, "Hey, Randy." And I'm like, "What's up?" He's like, hey, he goes, "Well, I was going to something, but I'm just too depressed." And he was so serious about it.
Even though he got a new one?
Oh, no, it was before he got the new one. He was just upset.
Oh, okay.
It was just him. It was just him and his broken
He's
phone.
disappointed in himself.
Yeah. He goes, "I guess." Well, he didn't say this, but I'm just assuming this. We thought, what they say about me is right. I'm careless. And then throws the case.
Right. Oh, man. Well, you got any closing thoughts before we resurrect Nick?
Yep, there you go. That was it. Those are my thoughts.
Thanks for listening / watching, everyone. We'll see you next week. Take care.
Guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.